Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing Luke chapter 13, verses 10 through 35. And then this Sunday we'll be reading Luke chapter 14. Today I'm reading out of the New Revised Standard Version. Now Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, it's against the rules, right? Remember, keep the Sabbath holy. Jesus is reinterpreting what that means. But at the time, the idea was you don't work, you don't do anything on Sabbath, including healing. So the leader of the synagogue is indignant, and he said to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, not on the Sabbath." But Jesus answered him and said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, who Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all of the wonderful things he was doing. So again, significant. Jesus, remember, this is part of Jesus's journey into Jerusalem. And part of that journey is encountering people from the faith that he grew up in. And he's distinguishing himself a little bit from what he was taught and saying, this is a different way of reading the text. This is a different way of interpreting Sabbath. And it's resonating with people. Next, we have the parable of the mustard seed. He said, "Therefore, what is the kingdom of God like, and to what should I compare it? It is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in the garden. It grew and became a tree, and the birds of the air made nests in its branches." So he's comparing the kingdom of God to a mustard seed. One thing you should know is that mustard plants do grow massively. They grow like tree-sized, and they are weeds. They're not particularly welcome, and attracting birds to your garden may or may not be something you want because they eat all the fruit. So this is an interesting metaphor for the kingdom of God, right? That it's like a weed that grows and brings a bunch of people that you may or may not want around. So I think that's a fantastic metaphor for God's kingdom, but also that it grows rapidly and so there you go. Next is a parable of the yeast. Again, he said, "To what should I compare the kingdom of God? It's like yeast that a woman takes and mixes in with 3 measures of flour until all of it is leavened." And 3 measures of flour, that would feed about 150 people. So again, there's this sense of something very small. A mustard seed is very, very tiny, growing into something massive that attracts a lot of people. Similar with the yeast, right? It's one woman, but she's baking bread with 3 cups of flour, right, to feed 150 people. Next, we have the story of the narrow door. Jesus went through one town and village after another, teaching as he made his way to Jerusalem. And someone asked him, "Master, will only a few be saved?" He said to them, "Strive to enter through the narrow door, for many will try to enter and will not be able." He's saying it's not like the path of following Christ is not simple. When once the owner of the house has got up and shut the door, and you begin to stand outside and knock at the door saying, "Master, open to us," and then in reply he will say, "I don't know where you come from." Then you will begin to say, "We ate and drank with you and you taught in our streets." But he will say, I don't know where you come from. Go away from me, all you evildoers. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth when you see Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, and you yourselves thrown out. Then people will come from east and west, from north and south, and will eat in the kingdom of God. Indeed, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last. There's an entire sermon here, but I'm going to give you some highlights. First of all, this knock and the door will be opened unto you is something that he said earlier, right? Knock and the door will be opened unto you. Here he's saying it won't be because the master won't recognize you. And in Matthew, we hear, right, that, when did we see you, right? And he says, when I was thirsty, when I was hungry, when I was a stranger, that when you encounter people who are suffering and you care for them, you're encountering Christ. And so this idea is, it's not enough just to show up. You also have to participate in the work that Jesus is doing. And that's not easy. The other thing he's doing here, right, he's not talking to everybody. And in Bible study, we really struggled with this idea that Jesus is being exclusive and saying, no, salvation is only for a few. Remember, he's talking to a group that believes, that is probably Jewish, that has been told that they are entitled to salvation on the basis of who they are, right? They're the chosen people. But Jesus is saying that's not enough, right? That you also, that you're not better than everyone else, I think is really the message, right? He's talking about specifically about the Gentiles, right? Folks from east and west and north and south. He's also calling them to account, saying, I know you think that you're fabulous and that you're doing everything right, but you are also responsible for some things that went wrong. He's calling them to account and saying, own up to the fact that you're not all that. And the first will be last and the last will be first, right? Humble yourselves. Recognize that people without resources are the ones that I'm going to put at the top of the list. I say resources because in my mind, power comes from having resources, whether that's money, relationships, knowledge, and education, friends and family who will take care of you, or connections. Resources are not just money, but power. And what Jesus is saying is, those who have fewer resources, I'm putting at the top of my list. Those with a lot, who include the audience he's speaking to, I believe, those of you who are in the majority faith, those of you who aren't struggling with prejudice all the time, those of you who have enough to eat, those of you who are honored members of the community, it's going to be harder for you to get into the kingdom of God. You're going to have to work harder on humbling yourselves. It's not that you have to work harder to get into the kingdom of God, but maybe just to recognize the grace of God. Because if you've been told by society that you're worthless, that you are a wretch, right? Amazing grace that saved a wretch like me. If you're already at the bottom, the idea of grace is powerful and overwhelming. But if you're at the top of the heap and you believe that you've done everything right and that you've taken care of everything on your own, you don't necessarily believe you need God because you've taken care of it all, at least in your mind, by yourself. So Jesus is encouraging them. He's trying to knock them down a peg and say, hey, maybe you could experience God more if you're not just relying on your inheritance. Lots to think about there. He'll continue this in verse 31. At the very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, get away from here. Herod wants to kill you. But I mean, that's nice of them to say, by the way, your life is in danger. He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me." Okay, so first of all, Jesus is acknowledging that the Pharisees are in cahoots with Herod. All right, these aren't just any Pharisees, these are high priests put in charge by Rome to manage the population such that they don't create disorder and disrupt Rome was law and order. That's what they liked. So anyway, there's a lot in those two lines. So he says, you who know Herod, go tell that fox for me. Listen, I'm casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow. And on the third day, I will finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day, I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills prophets and stones those who are sent to it. Okay, there's nothing in the Bible that talks about prophets being killed in Jerusalem. However, Jesus is suggesting that this religious majority in Jerusalem is not pure and holy and blameless. He's calling people to account. I mean, it's a prophetic speech. It reminds me of Jeremiah Wright when Jeremiah Wright was saying, God bless America, God bless America, God damn America, right? And he wasn't saying that America is inherently bad. He's saying, America is not taking care of the poor. America is not taking care of the people on the margins. You are killing people. So you don't act like you're this great, mighty nation. Anyway, look up the sermon. He got in a ton of trouble for it. He wasn't stoned to death, but certainly, there was some political fallout and personal fallout for him. And he's a UCC pastor, by the way, at Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago. Great church to check out online if you haven't. All right. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. I just want to point out Jesus is using a female metaphor to describe himself, which is cool. And he's saying, listen, I've tried. Y'all aren't paying attention. See, your house is left to you. So he's saying, now it's up to you guys. And I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. I think what he's saying here is, I'm moving on. It's up to you. I've done all I can here. It's up to you to do the work. I've given you a warning that it's tough to experience God when you're making yourself into a God. So, lots to think about. That's our Bible chat for the week. I will see you on Sunday. Looking forward to it. Bye, everybody.